All right, ready to dive into some code.
Let's do it.
Today we're looking at 10 Python mini apps that you can supposedly code in under 2 minutes each.
That's right.
So we'll see how true that is.
We'll put it to the test.
But before we get into the specifics of the apps, can you give us a quick overview of what Python is and why it's so popular, especially for beginners?
Sure. Python is a general-purpose programming language known for its readability and beginner friendliness. It's super versatile, used in web development, data analysis, machine learning, and even scripting. And it's got a really active and supportive community, which is great when you're just starting out.
That makes sense. I've definitely heard a lot of buzz about Python being a good starting point for aspiring coders. Okay, so let's jump into our first mini app, the calculator. Seems pretty basic, but is this a good way to get a taste of some fundamental coding concepts?
Absolutely. The calculator app is a great way to introduce the concept of conditional statements.
Conditional statements?
Yeah, think of it like this. You give the computer a set of instructions, but those instructions depend on certain conditions.
Okay, so it's like the computer is making decisions based on the information we give it.
Exactly. So in the calculator app, if you hit the plus sign, it adds. If you hit plus sign, it subtracts, and so on. Python takes your input and chooses which path to follow based on that input.
That's pretty cool. So even a simple calculator is demonstrating how we can program computers to make decisions, kind of like how our brains work. I'm already seeing how this relates to more complex programs. All right, next up is the password generator. This one seems super useful, especially with all the security concerns these days.
Definitely. And this app is a great way to learn about randomness in coding.
Randomness? I thought computers were all about logic and precision.
They are, but we can actually introduce controlled randomness using something called the random module in Python.
A random module, what does that do?
Well, it lets us generate random characters from a pool of letters, numbers, and symbols. And then we can string those characters together to create a password.
So every time you run the program, it spits out a totally different password.
Exactly. That's what makes it so secure. The more random the password, the harder it is to crack.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I never thought about how much math and logic goes into creating something as simple as a password. All right, what's next on our coding adventure?
Let's move on to the to-do list app. This one delves into data structures, specifically lists, and how to manipulate them using functions.
Lists, I get. Functions, not so much. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. A list is basically a way to store a collection of items in a structured way. Imagine a digital notepad where you can add, delete, and view your to-do items.
Okay, that makes sense. So where do functions come in?
Functions are like mini programs within our main program that perform specific tasks. For example, we could have a function to add a new task to our list, another function to view all our tasks, and another to delete a completed task.
So it's like we're creating a set of tools specifically for managing our to-do list.
Exactly. And this concept of manipulating lists with functions is used all over in programming.
So this to-do list app is teaching us how to organize and manage information in a way that computers can understand and work with.
Precisely. And it's a great introduction to some fundamental programming concepts.
Okay, my coding brain is starting to get warmed up. What other fun apps do we have?
How about we roll some virtual dice with the Dice Roller app?
Oh, I like that. No more searching for lost dice under the couch.
Exactly. This app uses that random module we talked about earlier to simulate rolling a dice. It picks a random number between 1 and 6, just like a real dice.
So it's not really rolling, it's just choosing a number from a set of possibilities.
That's right. But the effect is the same. Each time you run the program, you get a different random result.
That's pretty cool. I can already see how this could be useful for all sorts of games and simulations. Okay, what else do we have on our coding menu?
Well, how about a game? The number guessing game challenges you to guess a secret number chosen by the computer.
A game? Sounds fun. I'm competitive, so I'm already in. But how does the computer choose the secret number? Is it truly random?
It uses the random module to generate a random integer within a specified range, let's say between 1 and 10. Then the program compares your guess to the secret number and gives you hints, like too high or too low.
So it's like playing hot or cold with the computer.
Exactly. And those hints are generated using those conditional statements we talked about earlier. If your guess is lower than the secret number, it prints too low, and so on.
Okay, so we're combining randomness with decision-making to create a simple but interactive game. I'm starting to see how these coding concepts build upon each other. All right, what's next?
How about we get a bit more practical with the Countdown Timer app? This one can help you manage your time and stay focused.
Ooh, I definitely need that. Time management is not my strong suit. But how do you make a computer countdown time?
We use a combination of the time module and a loop. The time module gives us access to functions that deal with time, and the loop lets us repeat a set of actions for a specified duration.
So it's like setting a timer and then having the computer do something specific when the timer runs out.
Exactly. We can have the program display the remaining time, pause for 1 second, then update the time and repeat until the timer reaches 0.
Okay, that makes sense. And I can see how this could be used for all sorts of things, like creating reminders or even building more complex games with timed events.
Exactly. The time module is incredibly versatile. Speaking of versatility, how about we tackle temperature conversions with the next app?
Temperature converter. Sounds a bit dry, but I'm sure it's useful.
It is. This app showcases how to use Python for simple mathematical calculations. You input a temperature in Celsius, and the program converts it to Fahrenheit using a specific formula.
So it's like a mini calculator specifically designed for temperature conversions.
Precisely. And this app highlights how we can use variables and operators in Python to perform calculations and solve real-world problems.
I like that. It's not just about abstract code, it's about using code to do things that are actually helpful. All right, I'm ready for the next challenge. What else is on the coding agenda?
Let's get a bit more personal with the Age Calculator app. This one can tell you your age in seconds.
Wait, my age in seconds? That's a lot of seconds. But how does the computer know how old I am?
This app uses a module called DateTime, which allows us to work with dates and times in Python. You input your birth year, the program gets the current date and time, and then it calculates the difference in seconds.
So it's like Python is constantly checking its internal clock and comparing it to my birthday.
Exactly. And it can display that difference in various units, including seconds.
Okay, that's pretty mind-blowing. It makes you realize how much data and calculation is happening behind the scenes, even for something as simple as telling time.
Right, and with Python, we can tap into those capabilities and do all sorts of cool things.
Well, I'm definitely feeling more and more comfortable with the coding concepts. What's our last app for today?
Let's wrap things up with a classic, the Simple Alarm Clock app.
An alarm clock. But how can a computer make noise? Does it actually ring a bell?
Not quite. It uses that time.sleep function we talked about earlier to pause the program for a specified duration. Then, when the time's up, it prints a message to the console, like time to wake up.
So it's more like a timed reminder than a traditional alarm clock.
That's right. But it demonstrates how we can control the flow of time within our programs using simple commands.
Okay, I'm officially impressed by how much we've covered today. We've seen how Python can be used for calculations, games, time management, and even creating simple alarms.
And we've only just scratched the surface. These mini apps are just a starting point for all the amazing things you can do with coding.
I'm already buzzing with ideas. But before I get too carried away, let's take a quick break and then come back to revisit some of these apps and dive a bit deeper into the actual code itself.
That sounds like a plan. I'm ready to get into the nitty-gritty details.
Excellent. Let's take a short pause and then we'll be back to unpack the magic behind these Python mini apps. Okay, we're back, and my coding brain is definitely still in overdrive.
Mine too.
We've seen how Python can handle math, create passwords, and even simulate dice rolls, all with pretty short snippets of code.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can accomplish with just a few lines.
Definitely. So what other coding wonders are we going to uncover today?
Well, how about something that can help us out at restaurants? Let's take a look at the Tip Calculator app.
Oh man, I need that. I'm terrible at calculating tips on the fly.
Well, this app takes the mental math out of it. You just input the bill total and the tip percentage you want to give, and boom, it calculates the tip amount and the final total for you.
That's awesome. No more awkward fumbling with my phone's calculator under the table, trying to figure out percentages.
Exactly. It's all about using code to make our lives a little bit easier.
I love that. Okay, what's next?
How about we find out how many seconds we've been alive with the Age Calculator app?
Wait, what? You can calculate that?
Sure can. This app uses the DateTime module, which lets us work with dates and times in Python. You input your birth year, and the program calculates the difference between that and the current date, down to the second.
Whoa, hold on. So it's not just calculating my age in years, it's actually figuring out how many seconds have passed since I was born.
Yep, pretty wild, right? It shows you how precise we can get with these calculations.
My mind is officially blown. That's a lot of seconds. All right, what other time-bending tricks do we have up our sleeves?
Well, speaking of time, How about that classic, the simple alarm clock app?
I'm a little skeptical. How do you make a computer sound an alarm? Does it, like, blast a siren through the speakers?
Not quite. This alarm clock is more of a text-based reminder. It uses the time.sleep function to pause the program for a specific duration, and then it prints a message to the console when the time's up.
So it's more like a timed notification than a traditional alarm clock.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. But it demonstrates how we can use code to control the flow of time and create delayed actions.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like setting a timer in code and then having something specific happen when the timer goes off.
Exactly. And that concept of timed events can be used in all sorts of programs, from games to productivity tools.
Wow, I'm really starting to see how these seemingly simple mini apps are introducing us to some really fundamental coding concepts that can be applied to much more complex projects.
That's exactly right. And by breaking these concepts down into these bite-sized apps, it makes it easier to grasp the fundamentals.
It's like learning the alphabet before you try to write a novel.
Perfect analogy. All right, ready to dive back into the code and see how these apps actually work under the hood?
Absolutely. Let's take a closer look at the code and break down some of these concepts in more detail.
Sounds good. Let's start by revisiting that calculator app and those conditional statements.
Yeah, those if statements were pretty intriguing. They seem to be making decisions based on the input.
Exactly. So let's imagine you want to add two numbers using the calculator app. The code would look something like this. Python, if operation equals plus, result was number 1 plus number 2, if operation equals plus, print result.
Okay, I see that if statement there and those double equal signs. Can you break down what's happening in that first line?
Sure. So that first line is checking if the operation the user chose is addition, represented by the plus sign.
So it's like Python is asking, hey, did the user want to add these numbers together?
Yep. And those double equal signs are how we test for equality in Python. It's basically saying, is the value of operation exactly the same as the plus sign?
Okay, so it's a yes or no question, and if the answer is yes, then what happens?
Then Python moves on to the next line, which is result number 1 plus number 2. This is where the actual addition takes place. Python adds the values stored in number 1 and number 2 together, and then stores the answer in a new variable called result.
So it's like Python is doing the math behind the scenes based on the user's input.
Exactly. And then that last line, print result, is what displays the answer to the user.
Wow, so even in a simple calculation like this, there's a lot going on behind the scenes.